Hey guys, long time no see. Sorry, I don't know where my mic is. I don't know if you guys have heard of this new YouTuber called MrBallen, Mr. B. Allen, Mr. John B. Allen. He's a former Navy SEAL, and yeah, he looks kind of like a dick, but he's actually really cool. MrBallen, Mr. B. Allen, John B. Allen to be precise. He's a former Navy SEAL, and now he's married with like 4 kids or 3 kids. I don't know. He started out on TikTok, but he's actually an amazing storyteller, and he's very talented in explaining things. Tells, the strange, dark, and mysterious. And I thought I would try to change things up because I've been literally watching every single one of his videos ever since I found him last month. Anyway, so yeah, this is his new video, and I just want to do a little reaction. Let's check it out.
On Monday, May 23rd, 2005, 37-year-old John Wilson got home from a very long day at work and immediately just collapsed into a sofa. John was an oil pipeline inspector in Houston, Texas, and that day it had been extremely hot, and he'd been driving around all these different job sites, and he'd been out in the sun, and he really hadn't had a break. And so now that he was home, he was totally exhausted and knew he should probably just go to bed, but he didn't want to. He didn't want to just go right to bed and then have to get back up again and go right back to work. He wanted to unwind before calling it a night. And so he decided what he would do to unwind would be to go fishing, something he really loved to do. Normally, John did a lot of freshwater fishing, but tonight he decided he would do some saltwater fishing. And so at about 7:30 p.m. that night, he grabbed his fishing rod and his tackle box, he threw it in the back of his pickup truck, and then he hit the road. About an hour and a half later, he had driven all the way south to the very coast of Texas to a beach called Crystal Beach, which is right on the Gulf of Mexico. And instead of parking in one of the parking spaces in the lot, John, like he always did, just drove right through the gate out onto the actual beach. This beach actually had a reputation for having really hard-packed sand, almost like cement, because so many people like John would drive their vehicles out onto the beach. And so he goes through the gate and he drives straight out towards the water. And although it wasn't completely low tide yet, it was making its way towards low tide. And so there was a lot of beach exposed. And so John drove for quite a while, and then he parked still in the tidal zone, but well away from the water. John probably figured that he would not be there long enough for it to matter, because high tide was not for several hours. And so John hops out of his truck, he preps his fishing rod, and he walks out into the actual surf, and he begins to fish. And it would have been very, very peaceful, as there was not really anyone else down there, as it was pretty much the middle of the night. There might have been a couple other fishermen nearby, but that was about it. And for a while, John probably just enjoyed the peace and quiet. He enjoyed fishing. And then after a while, John got overwhelmingly tired. Maybe it was from all the work earlier in the day out in the sun that was just finally catching up to him, or maybe it was all the moving around in the surf, getting knocked around by the water that was making him tired, or maybe it was both. But either way, John decided he wanted to take a nap before he headed home again. And so he left the surf zone, he dropped his fishing rod in the back of his truck, and then he crawled underneath his truck to take a nap. The following morning, a man who was out for a walk near Crystal Beach looked out into the water, and he saw a truck was half submerged in the surf zone. And so he called the police, and then the police called a tow truck, and then the tow truck driver showed up to the beach, and when he got there, it was still relatively high tide, and so he had to wait until it was low tide enough that he could actually attach the chains and start pulling this truck out of the surf zone. And so finally, when it was low tide enough, the tow truck driver walked down, and as soon as he was standing next to this partially submerged vehicle, he saw there was a body poking out from underneath it, and that body belonged to John Wilson. No one knows for sure what happened to John after he climbed underneath his truck. But the best guess is after he went under there, he fell asleep and he slept for longer than he anticipated. And in that time frame, even though the sand of this beach had this reputation for being really, really hard, well, after a couple of hours, his truck would have begun to sink in the sand. It would have settled into the sand. And so John, as he's laying there, at some point would have been trapped by the underside of his truck. And then from that point, either the truck just continued to settle, ultimately crushing John to death, or it kept him pinned there, but he was still alive, and then the tide came in, and eventually he drowned. Either way, John's final moments must have been torture.
Wow, cool, yeah. See, this is why I like his shit. drowning is actually one of the most painful ways to die. People always view it as being peaceful, kind of like hanging, but honestly, probably the firing squad is most humane in my opinion, especially whenever you look at the statistics against like lethal injection. But anyway, wow, can you imagine going fishing and just like being so tired that I think I think he was crushed by the truck. Because if the truck was sitting out there, if you guys think that he was actually not they drowned, leave a comment, let me know. And if you guys want to see more like reaction videos like this, let me know. Thanks, John B. Allen. I know I'm going to get a copyright strike.